Hey everyone, Sam here from Sugar Spun Run, and today I'll be showing you how to make apple fritters. Apple fritters are one of my favorite recipes to make every fall. They're a great way to use up extra apples from apple picking, but they're also good any time of year. Today I'm going to be sharing a super easy apple fritter recipe that uses no yeast, so let's get started. The first thing you'll need is 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and you'll want to place that in a large bowl. We will add a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, 2 tablespoons of packed brown sugar, a tablespoon of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a teaspoon of salt. We'll give everything a good stir. With our dry ingredients well combined, we'll set these aside and prepare our wet ingredients. You will need to use a separate bowl, and we'll add 2 large eggs to this bowl. Now grab a whisk and we'll whisk these eggs until they're pale yellow and foamy. This will just take about 10 or 15 seconds. Now we'll add 1 cup of whole milk and a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and we'll give that a stir again. Next, you'll need 2 tablespoons of melted butter. I like to melt my butter a little bit in advance, that way it's not super hot when I add it to my wet ingredients, my milk and my eggs. So we'll add this in while whisking. And if you notice your mixture curdling a little bit, that's fine. Your batter is still going to be okay, but letting the butter cool a little bit before adding it does help prevent this and helps your ingredients get combined a little bit better. At this point, we're ready for the most important ingredient in our apple fritters, the apples. For this recipe, I recommend using an apple that you actually enjoy eating plain. I don't really love using Granny Smith apples here. I feel like they're a little bit too tart. I like to use a more sweet apple, like a Honeycrisp or a Gala apple. In fact, I'm using Gala apples today. What you'll want to do is you'll want to peel your apples and then slice them into about 1/4 inch size pieces. You want them to be pretty small. This is about 2 cups of apples, and for me this is about 2 large sliced apples. I like to add a teaspoon of ground cinnamon to my apples and use a spatula to just coat them in the cinnamon. We now have all of the components for our apple fritter batter, so let's get to combining everything. Bring back your dry ingredients, and we'll give our wet ingredients just another quick whisk, and then add the wet ingredients to your dry ingredients. I like to use a spatula to fold these ingredients together. You do want to take care that you don't overmix the batter. Once our wet ingredients and dry ingredients are about halfway combined, now we'll add our chopped and prepared apples. And we'll use our spatula to make sure everything is nicely mixed together. We'll let this apple fritter batter rest for a couple minutes while we prepare our oil. We'll need to head over to the stovetop, and you'll want to use a large, heavy-bottomed saucepan, I like to use a Dutch oven, and add enough canola or vegetable oil to cover about 2 to 3 inches of the bottom of the pot. You will need a thermometer to make sure that your oil reaches the correct temperature for this recipe. As you can see, I fitted my pot with a candy thermometer. It's not touching the bottom of the pot, but it is in the oil still, and we are looking for the temperature of 360 to 365 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that our oil is heated, let's make our way over to the stovetop and start frying these apple fritters. We will drop our fritters by about 3 tablespoons of batter at a time into the oil. I don't recommend frying more than about 3 fritters at one time because adding that cooler batter really does drop the temperature of your oil, and it's really important that you keep that consistent temperature of about 360 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll fry these apple fritters for about 1 minute to 1 minute and 15 seconds, and then use your tongs to turn them over and fry them for another 1 minute to 1.5 minutes on the other side. Once your apple fritters are a nice golden brown color, we'll use our tongs to remove them from our oil and transfer them to our paper towel lined plate. Don't forget to make sure your oil comes back to 360 degrees Fahrenheit before adding more batter and frying more apple fritters. Once your apple fritters are fried, I like to dip them in an apple cider glaze. Now you can skip this step. You can enjoy the apple fritters as they are with no topping. You can sprinkle them with powdered sugar. You can roll them in cinnamon and sugar. Any of those are great options, but I like to make this really simple glaze. What you'll need is 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, just 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and about 2 to 2.5 tablespoons of apple cider. Now, if you don't have apple cider on hand, you can substitute water or milk. I just like the slight flavor that the apple cider adds. If your glaze is too thick at this point, you can add a little more liquid as needed, and if it's too thin, you can add a little more sugar. It's really hard to mess this glaze up. Now we will dip our apple fritters. You'll want to turn them in the glaze and then transfer them to a wire rack and let that glaze cool for a couple minutes before digging in. Keep in mind that these apple fritters are best enjoyed warm. They don't really keep well or carry over well to the next day. That is all there is to my favorite super simple apple fritter recipe. I really hope you guys will try this one out, and if you do, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe, and I will see you next time.